What's up, guys? Rick here with your DFS preview for this week's Sanderson Farms Championship. Right back at it after a President's Cup, which went pretty well, right? Tom Kim was great. Max Homa was great. The usual suspects in Patrick Cantlay, Xander Schauffele, Jordan Spieth, Justin Thomas were all great. I had a decent week, and based on the screenshots that I saw that were tweeted at me, I think a lot of people did as well. Back to a full field cut event this week, which is always fun. We're going to the Country Club of Jackson, and we've got a handful of golfers who did play the President's Cup last week teeing it up. So we're going to go through the golf course. We're going to go through the key stats. We'll look at every tier of DraftKings pricing and take a very data-driven approach at this week's Sanderson Farms. Let's get after it. Here's the golf course, the Country Club of Jackson, Mississippi. What you'll note about the key stats, which is a calculation that I run that looks at the last dozen years of data for each golf course compared to the strengths of each golfer for that year, and it finds out what stats are highly correlated to success. There's kind of two for me that stand out in a big way. There's strokes gained approach, which is always important, but it ranks 11th out of 43, which means there's only 10 other courses on the PGA Tour schedule in which strokes gained approach is more correlated to success. And then strokes gained putting, fourth, which means there's only 3 other courses on the PGA Tour schedule in which strokes gained putting is more correlated with success. It doesn't take much to realize, like, oh, okay, that makes a lot of sense. What does Sam Burns do very well? He hits his second shot well, and he putts well. That's like his strong suit. He's great at everything, but in theory, that's what you want to boil it down to. So those are the two things we're going to be looking at the most this week. There is sizable greens here, right? 6,200 square feet on average. That's larger than the PGA Tour average. So it kind of makes sense that strokes gained approach being a much better stat than, for example, greens in regulation. Greens in regulation, you could be 50 feet away on every single birdie putt. That's not really going to help you around the Country Club of Jackson, but being able to get it dialed in, be on the right level, give yourself the right look at it, and then roll enough of those putts in has been the successful path to victory, or at least towards the top of the board at the Country Club of Jackson. They're Bermuda greens. It's actually either Bermuda or Zoysia throughout. The tees have a Zoysia Bermuda mix. The rough's 2 inches at start of week, so it's not going to be incredibly penal. So I think what we're going to see when we do go to the cheat sheet, when we do go to especially the top of it, there's a handful of guys that I'm quite excited about. I think the top of the board is going to be pretty heavily owned this week. Let's take a look at that cheat sheet. All the data, everything you see is from my website. It's RickRunGood.com. You should go sign up for it. It's a giant golf database. I love it. You probably will too. Okay, top of the board, the 10K range. Sam Burns, Sahith Theegala, JT Poston, Russell Henley. That's not a name we've heard a lot as of late. Let's start with Sam Burns. He's not only the defending champion, but we saw him in action last week. If you're looking at the cheat sheet, you will see the President's Cup in there. So Sam Burns is going to get credit for a 1 in the President's Cup. Guys that did not, like guys that were on the international team, like Christian Bezuidenhout, they're going to have a 2 there. So don't get confused. I mean, yeah, technically Bezuidenhout finished second, but it was out of 2 teams. But I did want the ability to show you that those guys played last week, right? Which I think is important. I'm trying to build a database that is all encompassing across 6 tours and international team events. If they played, I want you to have access to it. So Sam Burns, our defending champion. There's kind of a lot to unravel here. Sam Burns at the end of last season did not play particularly well. He didn't drive it well. The approach game got a little bit worse. The putter was still there, all fine and dandy. If you look beyond his record at the President's Cup, I think most people would say Sam Burns was one of the best players for the U.S. last week. He was dialed in. He was rolling in putts from all over the place. He was hitting some of these long iron shots, and even I saw him hit a five wood that landed like a butterfly with sore feet, right? I mean, it was angelic. So I think Sam Burns passed the eye test last week, played all 5 sessions, played well, gets to go back to the Country Club of Jackson where he's defending and it fits his skill set. He's a great iron player when he's on. He's a great putter when he's on. We have seen the last 12 months have been basically the chalkiest stretch of golf since I started doing this. So we're probably talking 5, 6, maybe even 7 years, at least that I can remember. And I went back and I ran the data. It's been incredibly chalky. You could argue that is because the live guys who left kind of filled up that middle of the board, and now the middle of the board is kind of gone, so the top of the board is able to kind of feast a little bit more. Max Homa obviously successfully defended at the Fortinet, the first event of this season. There were 5 successful title defenses last year. That was the most in 15 years. If you look at the expensive golfers and you look at the highly owned golfers, they outperformed basically any year that I had in my database in 2022. I think we are still in that stretch. I think the top of the board, Sam Burns, Sahith, even JT Poston, Sebastian Munoz, Taylor Montgomery, like these guys are eating up a hell of a lot of the win equity. I'm going to try to probably get as much exposure to those guys as I can. So it starts with Sam Burns. Sahith is next. And if you look at his recent results here, you're going to see he finishes 6th at the Fortinet, gets off to a great start there, struggled at the Tour Championship, but was great in the playoffs besides that. What does Sahith do well? Does he fit around the Country Club of Jackson? And the answer is like, kind of, right? I mean, he is one of the more volatile golfers that we have. He's gained strokes on approach basically every other event going back his last 8 events. Same thing with the putter. We've seen the putter get hot. He's gained at least 2.5 strokes in 4 out of his last 5. That's a really good sign. He can drive it really well. He can drive it really poorly. He's just kind of all over the place. So if you're looking for this type of volatility, Sahith is very interesting. You know, I got a lot of tweets. I like to follow this. Like, hey, if you just bet the same golfer every single time you teed it up, like, would that be a good idea or a bad idea? And I get a lot of questions like, hey, Rick, it's a new season. I'm starting to do this. I want to do this. Is Sahith a good option? I think he kind of is, right? You're going to get, outside of this week, you're going to get really good odds on him most weeks, especially as these fields get stronger. And I don't think he's going to be overmatched when fields get stronger, right? This is a guy who probably should have won in Phoenix, got a little bit unlucky, hit a couple of bad shots coming down the stretch, but probably should have won and definitely could have won. Now he finished 8th here last year, missed the cut the year before. A much more volatile option than someone like a JT Poston, who's 10,200, who has just been much more consistent, right? He wins the John Deere Classic. He finishes 15th at the Tour Championship. He finished 3rd here in 2021. This is a guy who does the 2 things well that you're looking for. He hits his irons well and he putts well, right? And that's kind of the combination around this place. He can heat it up in a moment's notice. Which leaves us with Russell Henley, which is not a name we've spent a lot of time talking about. Where has Russell Henley been? What has Russell Henley been up to? Let's find out here. Well, he had a good, I mean, this is a pretty good finish to the season, right? He finishes T10 at the Rocket Mortgage, T5 at the Wyndham. He missed the cut in Memphis at the playoff event, but then he finished T35, which is about middle of the pack, at the BMW Championship. And it's good to see this, the ball striking come back. That's what you were really, really worried about with Russell Henley, is there was a stretch of golf, especially here during the major championships, he was pretty bad, at least in the ball striking categories. And that is so unheard of for Russell Henley. So nice to see that he's back there, but he's completely lost the putter. Now, I could argue, and I think the way that you'd like to look at this is when a guy is as bad with the putter as Russell Henley has been, and you get a stoppage, an end of the season stoppage. Like, it's been 5 weeks since we've seen Russell Henley play. You got to believe he's going to get this ironed out, right? He's probably gone home to Georgia, and he's probably worked hard to figure out whatever was going on in this putting stroke, because it's not like he's been a good putter, but he certainly hasn't been this bad. If we go to the trends tool, I bet you he's one of like the prime breakout candidates. Who am I looking for? Russell Henley. Where are you, Russ? Okay, he's right here. So he's kind of in that right quadrant that you want, the correct quadrant that you want to be in, which is pretty good tee to green play and putting below his baseline. If you go and actually look at the power rankings, Russell Henley, believe it or not, over the last 36 rounds is the best of anyone not name Scott Stallings over $9,000, right? He's still gaining over 3/4 of a stroke in the ball striking categories over his last 36. That's a pretty great sign. You can see he's been one of the worst putters that we have, losing a half a stroke per round. But what is Russell Henley's 100 round baseline in terms of putting? Like 100 rounds, I think that's what you are as a golfer. And Henley is a minus 0.2. So he is a third of a stroke per round worse in his last 36 than he is basically to his 100 round baseline. So I would argue we're likely to see some positive regression here, which is to the tune of about a third of a stroke per round, which over 4 rounds is what, 1.2 strokes, 1.25 strokes, something like that. So I think this is a pretty interesting spot to roll out Russell Henley if you want to be a little bit different. There are cases to be made for Sam Burns and Sahith and JT Poston. There's not as much case to be, not as big of a case to be made for Russell Henley, who has, no real recent history at this event to be spoken for, that you could be buying a stock low and kind of getting it as it's bouncing back. That's the way that Russell Henley feels to me. The 9K range. Yeah, like fire up all these guys, right? Denny McCarthy's been awesome at the Country Club of Jackson. He had a decent stretch at the end of last year where he had top 30s in each of the 2 playoff events that he qualified for. He did not make the Tour Championship, and then he finished 25th at the Fortinet. Sebastian Munoz was maybe the best player for the Internationals last week, right? 2.5 points. I don't think he lost a match. I think he was 2-0-1 and can get hot. Oh, by the way, he's won this event before. Won it in 2020, right? So like Munoz, back baby, let's go. Taylor Montgomery's probably going to be the most popular one here. He's got a stretch of 5 consecutive top 9 finishes across the Korn Ferry Tour from last year and the 3rd place finish at the Fortinet. He is long. He putts it well. I'm very excited about him for the upcoming season. Like, he's going to be more popular than the rest of these guys. The one guy that I want to spend a little bit of time on is Scott Stallings. We should not forget Scott Stallings. It'll be easy to play 2 guys in the 9K range, but I do think that if you're going to play Taylor Montgomery, which a lot of people are, and you're looking for a second guy in the 9K range, it's easy to say Munoz, past champion who's playing well. It's easy to say Denny McCarthy, 4 straight top 20s at this event, and he's playing well. Scott Stallings is probably the 3rd guy on that list that you would want to kind of combine with Taylor Montgomery, but look at what Scott Stallings has done. His week at the Tour Championship was horrendous. It was the 4th worst week he has ever put together on the PGA Tour, and Scott Stallings has been around for a very long time. You can see, horrible. Lost 12.8 strokes on approach. Like, I don't know what happened. I could not have imagined anything possibly worse for him. However, that's not really Scott Stallings, right? You look at the rest of his game, coming down the stretch from the Charles Schwab Challenge, he was phenomenal on approach. He piled up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 top 15 finishes in his last 10 starts, including the horrendous Tour Championship. What does he do well? Putts well, hits his approaches well, drives it okay at times, around the green game, slightly positive, but he does the 2 things that we would want to find success at. Savvy vet. How has he played around the Country Club of Jackson? He had a 6th place finish here in 2021, missed the cut in 2022. I don't know. This feels like, again, kind of an interesting buy low spot. If we look at everybody in this field and do, let's do last 36 on approach. Where does Scott Stallings rate? 5th, 6th. And a lot of these guys, these are not all guys. Actually, he's the best in terms of guys who have 36 PGA Tour rounds. These other guys don't have 36 PGA Tour rounds. They might have 6 PGA Tour rounds, 30 Korn Ferry rounds, for example. So Scott Stallings is basically the number 1 approach player over the last 36, including the 4 worst rounds of his career, right? I think that's a pretty good positive, isn't it? If you remove the Tour Championship, he's just head and shoulders above everybody else. So I'll be interested to see how the industry deals with the 9K range. I suspect it is a lot of Taylor Montgomery and then maybe someone else. I don't think Scott Stallings is in line to be the first someone else. So it's interesting. We'll see. Wednesday, 3 p.m. Eastern time, RickRunGood YouTube channel on the live chat. we'll certainly know more about ownership and kind of can make some decisions from there, because there's also more interesting option. Bezuidenhout, who played well last week at the President's Cup and finished 12th at the BMW Championship. Like, he's here. Emiliano Grillo, someone who has figured out the putter, who I'm very bullish on for the next, I don't know, until he stops putting well. Davis Riley, up and coming, really great time. I mean, the 9K range is phenomenal. I think a lot of our decision-making process will be helped when we know what that ownership, or when we can start projecting that ownership, which we should know, Tuesday morning. And then obviously it'll become more mature on Wednesday during the live chat. If you're finding this at all helpful, do me a favor, hit the like button, make sure you're subscribed to this channel, help the movement here. I know it's the stuff that creators always ask for, but it really does go a long way, and I can continue to do more and interesting stuff if this continues to grow. And if you're watching on YouTube, there is also an audio version that you can get on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts. There's a link in the description. If you leave a rating, that'd be great as well. The 8K range, kind of a small little range, starts with Sepp Straka, goes down to Wyndham Clark. We have to talk about Thomas Dietrich. Thomas Dietrich is a guy that got his card for this year via the top 50 of the Korn Ferry Tour last year, and it's a name you're going to be seeing a lot more of. And because he's been playing across, his last 3 events, one's on the PGA Tour, one's on the European Tour, one's on the Korn Ferry Tour, right? He's been playing all over. So you have to kind of look at this, zoom out a little bit and try to figure out what type of player Thomas Dietrich is. The good news is I do have the strokes gain from the European Tour. I obviously have the strokes gain breakdown from the PGA Tour. I have the results from the Korn Ferry, but they don't do the strokes gain breakdown. But we can get a pretty good example, or a pretty good snapshot of who Thomas Dietrich is. Well, he finished T12 at the Fortinet and gained a ton of strokes off the tee there. He's a very good ball striker. He finished T5 at the BMW PGA Championship. That is the premier event on the European Tour. Didn't play as well on the Korn Ferry at the end of last year. He had 1 top 5, but he also missed 2 cuts in the final 2 events. But if you just look at this, it appears to me that he's a very, very good ball striker. Across the globe, he's gained at least 3 strokes in the ball striking categories 6 times in his last 9 measured events, which is really, really good. Now, he does it a lot more off the tee than he does on approach, but you'll see, he gained 4.5 strokes at the Kazoo Open in early August. He gained 4 strokes at the BMW International Open on approach alone. So he is capable of getting hot, and he's a very, very solid putter. I could see Thomas Dietrich having a very good year and getting that started basically right now in Jackson. Would you rather play a Thomas Dietrich at 8,800 or a Sepp Straka at 8,900? And Straka has, to his credit, started to figure out his game a little bit. His playoffs were phenomenal, but he was horrible before that. He has missed 4 straight cuts at the Country Club of Jackson. I think we know a little bit more about what Sepp Straka is. I think Dietrich's a little bit more exciting, a little bit more dynamic, hopefully a little less owned. They might be comparable, quite frankly. I don't think anybody's rushing to get access to Thomas Dietrich. I don't think anybody's rushing to get access to Sepp Straka. Again, we'll know more later in the week. In terms of safety, Taylor Moore has just been a top 10 machine, right? He finished 17th at this event last year. Or I shouldn't say a top 10 machine, like a top 30 machine. The 6th place finish a handful of weeks ago at the Rocket Mortgage, and then he backed it up with a top 5 at the Wyndham, and then we saw him play a couple of playoff events, and he finished inside the top 30-ish at both of those, played well at the Fortinet, made the cut there. So he finds himself playing a lot of weekends. The one guy that I'm a little bit worried about is Seamus Power here. And if you guys have followed this channel for long enough, I'm usually quite bullish on Seamus. So here we go. There we go. But what we're seeing from him is so bizarre. To say he limped to the finish line last year would be a generous statement. He finished T30 at the Horizon Irish Open, missed the cut at the Open Championship, missed the cut in Memphis, finished 65th out of a field of 70 at the BMW Championship. Not good. And even more concerning, he lost strokes on approach in all 4 of those, including 8. That's not a typo. He lost 8 strokes on approach in 2 rounds in Memphis. That's one of his stronger parts of his game. The other problem is he's also lost strokes putting in 4 of 5. That's also another strong part of his game. So we're talking about the 2 parts of his game that are normally the strongest, that are the 2 parts of his game that I'd be most excited about for the Country Club of Jackson. He's really struggling with. Now, we could say, hey, it's been 5 weeks since we've last seen him. We gave, who did I give credit? Russell Henley credit by saying he's figured it out, figured the putter out in 5 weeks. And we could say that for Seamus. I think it's a little bit more of a stretch to say that Seamus is going to be able to fix his driver, which he's significantly below baseline, his approach play, which he's significantly below baseline, his putter, which he's significantly below baseline, than just saying Russell Henley's putting a little bit worse than he normally putts, which is generally kind of bad, right? Like, I'm just asking Russell Henley to go back to being a bad putter. I'm asking Seamus Power to go back to being a great putter, which he's far away from, being a great ball striker, which he's far away from. I don't know. It feels like more of a stretch. I can give it like a couple of points in that favor for Seamus, that it's been 5 weeks and hopefully he's had time to figure it out. But it feels like a little bit more of a leap than the leap that we took for Russell Henley. The other way to get in on Henley and to get in on Power, if you're really willing to give them the benefit of the doubt, is going to be Jock Market. Jock Market is stock market DFS. You buy shares of golfers, and then throughout the week, depending on their finishing position, there are guaranteed payouts. So, for example, Danny Willett, who coughed up the Fortinet Championship, did not cash 150 to 1 tickets. He still got a $20 payout by finishing second. Well, he sold for $3.29 that week. So you gained basically $17 of profit. You actually made more profit per share on Danny Willett than you did on Max Homa at the Fortinet Championship. So this is kind of an interesting way because it's so much based on sentiment. And I really, really, really don't think anyone is rushing to get Russell Henley, are rushing to get Seamus Power. So if you do like that buy low opportunity, I think the Jock Market is kind of an interesting way to get them. Bidding will start Wednesday, IPO, where you bid on shares of golfers. That'll close Wednesday night. If you miss that, you can still buy, like if you wake up Thursday morning, you can go buy shares of golfers. You can trade throughout the event. Use the code RICK. It'll get you a $100 deposit bonus. There's a link in the description. And if you want to see it in action, Wednesday night at 8:15 p.m. Eastern time, Joe Idoni and myself, we do a power hour. It's on the Rick Run Good YouTube channel. So those are some guys that I think if everyone is down sentiment-wise, you should be considering. The 7K range, this is kind of a little bit of not a dead zone. There are some interesting options, but there are some guys that really have my attention in the 6K range. So let's just kind of look at the sevens as a whole. And I've got the last 36 piled up here, and let's just go by strokes gained total. Justin Suh, wow, missed the cut at the Fortinet Championship while everyone was very excited about him. If you're willing to kind of zoom out, forgive and forget, remember that it's still 5 top 9 finishes in his last 8 starts, including a win on the Korn Ferry Tour. For sure, the Fortinet was not good. First event kind of as a full PGA Tour member. Could you cut him some slack there? I think maybe you could. Robbie Shelton here as well. Robbie Shelton, you can see 4 consecutive top 28s. He won a couple of weeks ago the Pinnacle Bank Championship. That's a Korn Ferry Tour event. He had a top 25 at the Fortinet. A little bit reliant on the putter, but we know that's important this week. I wish he was a little bit of a better ball striker, but Robbie Shelton is interesting. Still very bullish on Austin Eckroat, right? Austin Eckroat made the cut at the Fortinet Championship. I think his weekend was horrible. Let me look through this real quick. We'll go to the Holy Grail, and I can fire up a couple things on the Holy Grail in a second. Let's go Holy Grail, Austin Eckroat, and I just want to see his rounds here. Yeah, okay, it was Sunday in particular. So he gains 2.5 strokes on Thursday, 2 on Friday. That's great. Loses a quarter of a stroke on Saturday. Okay, not the worst thing. Punts away 5 strokes on Sunday. So 3 out of those 4 rounds, he was really good. I was already bullish on him kind of before the year started. I think I'd be more than thrilled to go back to a $71 Austin Eckroat. Justin Lauer, who had a chance to win the Fortinet Championship, is not really a flash in the pan type of guy. Look at this. That's 5 consecutive top 36s. It's back-to-back top 10 finishes at the Nationwide Children's Hospital and the Fortinet. I mean, this is a really strong stretch of golf from him. Putts really well, almost too well. Hits it okay. That's not the worst thing I've ever seen. Let's dive Davis Thompson because, again, we are trying to compare a bunch of guys, across a bunch of different tours. We're looking for very specific set of skills like Liam Neeson has. You look at a Fortinet championship in which Davis Thompson finished inside the top 10, gained strokes across the board, 3.7 in the ball striking categories, and 3.5 with the putter. That's really, really good. Had a decent stretch at the end of the Korn Ferry season. The very few measured PGA Tour events that we have on him, he's a pretty decent ball striker. He hasn't putted well, but he putted well at the Fortinet. And really the only other event, I mean, it's 6 months between measured events for him, which is kind of tough to tell if he's actually a good putter or not. I guess we could look up his Korn Ferry numbers. Hold on one second. He was 68th in putting average, which is kind of a crappy stat, but it's what we have. Converted a lot of birdies. 38th in birdie or better conversion percentage. 20. I mean, these are horrible stats, unfortunately, but I think he's average or maybe above average slightly in terms of being a putter. So like it's the fall, right? These guys that are hot, these guys that are able to find something, these guys that are high upside players. I mean, Davis Thompson over the last 36 rounds is the 6th best player, 7th best player in the 7K range. Like that's pretty indisputable. Now some of it's across the Korn Ferry Tour, obviously a really good Fortinet championship, but like I don't mind going to these guys that nobody's like, is anybody going to want to play Davis Thompson? He's coming off a top 10 at the Fortinet, finished 35th here last year. The more I stare at this, the more I'm going to play more of Davis Thompson. That makes a lot of sense to me. Let's just sort this by approach, find the good putters as well. So Brendan Steele, number 1 in approach. He's probably dead last in putting. Lee Hodges has been okay, right? He's a good approach player and a positive putter. Mark Hubbard as well. Will Gordon, that's probably a very small sample size of putting for him. But look at Will Gordon's last 6 events. So he's got 2 5th-place finishes. That is Utah and Pinnacle. Those are Korn Ferry Tour events. He won the Albertsons. That was 4 starts ago. Made the cut and played well enough in the Korn Ferry playoffs. And then he finished 36th at the Fortinet. Is Will Gordon back? These are the types of guys that I'd be buying into. Okay, we'll do 6K, and then we will do a model. We'll run a model. $6,000 range. All right, well, spoiler alert. I just showed you the guy that I'm probably most excited about. So let's just go down to him. It's Harrison Endicott, who, for the record, I saw Harrison Endicott. Endicott or Endicott? It has a Y. I believe it's Endicott. I saw Harrison Endicott hit one of the greatest shots I've ever seen hit in my entire life in person, standing about 3 feet away. So this would have been in like 2020. After golf came back, I can't remember, but it was probably May of 2020. Was it May? The Korn Ferry Tour came to Las Vegas. They played at Paiute, which is a golf course I play all the time. There's 3 golf courses over there. It's weird to see professionals play a golf course that you play all the time, because they obviously play it way differently. Harrison Endicott hit a golf ball into the desert, pin high, 30 yards away from the green, and it is just pure rock. I don't hit out of the desert. I'm not going to screw up my clubs. He hit a spinny wedge off a rock, short-sighted to a pin where it landed once on the fringe, stopped 3 inches away from the cup, and he tapped it in for birdie on a par 5. I was shook. I've never seen anything like it. Now, obviously, that shot does not mean he's a good player. It means he's a great player, obviously, but it does not mean he's going to play well on specific tours. But let's look at this a little bit. So Endicott has a very Korn Ferry Tour-esque profile from last year, which is a win in May, then a couple of weak finishes, a couple missed cuts, then a couple top 10s, then a top 5 in Utah in August. Then he finishes well with like a top 20, but then he misses the cut in a play. Like this is a vintage Korn Ferry Tour profile. You are incentivized to finish to get 1 win, 3 top 10s, and miss the cut every. It's just that's the way you get your card. So he gets his card. Plays the Fortinet Championship, and is 5th in the field in strokes gained approach, gains across the board, finishes T12. If we get any semblance of this version of Harrison Endicott for 60, I think he's $6,500. Yes, please. Yes, please. In the $6,000 range over the last 36 rounds, he's number 1 in strokes gained approach. Obviously, not all of those are going to be measured, so he has kind of a sample size advantage. But I'm quite bullish on this kid, and the 12th place finish at the Fortinet goes a long way. Carl Yuan, you can throw into the category of, was quite popular at the Fortinet, missed the cut. Justin Suh was kind of in that category as well. Who else do we have here? Chesson Hadley, who I've gone back and forth on, and I've actually, I will probably write him up as a fade because he is incredibly volatile, and you get miscuts and then top 10s and miscuts and top 10s. He at least does have the skill set that you would like, which is approach play and putting. Now, he gives a lot of it back off the tee, which is a little bit worrisome, but I would not destroy you for playing. I probably won't play Chesson Hadley, but I wouldn't destroy you for playing him. So flipping this back to the salary side of things. Callum Tarrant, who has missed 2 cuts in a row, including the Fortinet Championship. Let's see what he did at the Fortinet, because I like this kid. Showed us a lot of upside last year. Lost a stroke and a half on approach, gave away way more around the greens. Okay, that's something he rarely does. Yeah, volatile. Maybe we'll take a wait and see approach on him. What else do we have? What else do we have here in the 6s? I thought there was one pretty good value when I was scanning through this earlier. It was a young guy. Who was it? Oh, okay. Nicholas or Nico Echeverria. So here he is. I'll pull up his stat profile. Another young guy who is going to be a bit volatile. Let me pull him up. He did play the Fortinet. I think his name is giving me issues. I'll get that corrected. But he did play the Fortinet. He missed the cut. T5, the Korn Ferry Tour Championship. T7, a couple of starts before that. Look, I mean, a bunch of top 10s earlier in the year. This is, again, a classic Korn Ferry Tour profile. He hits the ball a long way. Even in his missed cut last week, I think he was top 30 or 40 in driving distance. He drove it fairly accurately. Super, super talented young guy. And for $6,200, if he makes the cut, you're thrilled. Anything outside of anything more than that is stealing at the moment. Okay, let's see if we can find some more with a model. So I will run a model here. And this is the custom model at RickRunGood.com. I'll zoom in a little bit. Okay, how do we want to do this? Well, I think it's pretty clear. Let's do last 36 rounds. And let us do... Well, we know we got to go on approach and putting. 25 on each of those. Those are historically very good correlators to success. But let's do then a little sprinkle, 10 off the tee, 10 around the green to complete our weighted strokes gain total that we've created, our custom strokes gain total. This is over the last 36 rounds. So now what are we going to do? Okay. Well, what do we know about the Country Club of Jackson? It's pretty straightforward. It's a little bit long. I could give a little bit of a boost to driving distance, which actually, let's go back and look at that. Was distance was ranked 13th. Okay, so that obviously gets baked into off the tee, but let's give it a little bit more. Okay, so let's give it like 5 more, right? So now we've got basically 15 off the tee, 5 of them purely on distance, and 10 on strokes gained off the tee, which includes distance. So now I've got 25 left. I don't care about greens in regulation. I don't particularly care about accuracy or any of these buckets. What I could do is give another little boost to putting on Bermuda. Let's say 5 on Bermuda. So it's a lot on putting, but let's get freaky. Who cares? It's Monday. We've got 20 left. Now, this is where I would normally just say fantasy points or fantasy points gained, just because that's, again, it's like I say it every week. We're playing a fantasy point game. Why would I not weigh fantasy points? So let's do fantasy points gained. 20. My number one golfer is Yeah, no freaking surprise. Sam Burns. However, my number 2 golfer is Davis Thompson, who I just said, the more I stare at this, the more Davis Thompson I'm going to end up playing. Well, now definitely, because he is $7,200 and he is my second ranked golfer in my model. Scott Stallings is 3rd. JT Poston is 4. Thomas Dietrich is 5. Sahith is 6. Love. My 6-pack, the top 6, love. 7 is Benny On. Wow. All right, so Benny On obviously gets a big boost for distance, gets a big boost for off the tee, played well at the Fortinet, came up a little bit short. Surprised to see him there, $7,400. Will Gordon, who we kind of looked at and was like, is Will Gordon back? Is 8th. Mark Hubbard, 9th. Chesson Hadley, 10. This is like when, remember at the Fortinet where I was like, man, I don't really like Trey Molinax, and then he became the number 1 golfer in my model. He ended up missing the cut, which was nice because I didn't really play much of him. Kind of a similar situation here with Chesson Hadley. Not as exaggerated. I'm not super I'm like a 4 out of 10 on Chesson. The model loves him a lot more. 10 out of, 140 guys. Taylor Montgomery's 11. Cool with that. I'll just read you the rest of the top 15. Taylor Moore, Emiliano Grillo, Ben Griffin, who's $6,300, and Robbie Shelton at 73. So that's very interesting. That's a really good mix of guys that I definitely like, guys that I could like, and like some guys that I'm not particularly high on, but really only one of those in Chesson Hadley. So this is a pretty good model for me. I like that. I like that a lot. Okay. I think that'll do it. Again, take a second, hit the like button, subscribe, all that stuff. It goes a long way. I really appreciate it. Let me know what you think about this week. Let me know who you think's going to win. Let me know who you think's a little bit underpriced. Let me know your thoughts on the Country Club of Jackson or how you did at the President's Cup last week. You can either tweet me, it's at RickRunGood, or you can leave a comment below. Best of luck this week, and I'll talk to you guys soon.